بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم، والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. حضورنا الكريم، لأننا اليوم سنعرض معكم دراسة مستفيضة بالرصد والتحليل تحت عنوان مواقف جيل الشباب المسلم من الدين وعلمائه في العالم العربي. تعتمد في عرضها للمعلومة ولغة الأرقام، لذا سأبدأ معكم بهذه اللغة. ففي منطقتنا العربية يوجد أكثر من 200 مليون عربي أعمارهم تحت سن 34، وهم يشكلون الجزء الأكبر من سكان هذه المنطقة من العالم. أي وربما وبشكل أبسط، إذا كان لدينا 3 أشخاص فاثنان منهم سينتمون إلى هذه الفئة العمرية، فئة الشباب. كما أن التقديرات تشير إلى أن عدد سكان المنطقة سيرتفع إلى 317 مليون نسمة حالياً، ويصل إلى 349 مليون نسمة بحلول عام 2019. هذا الواقع وهذه الأرقام لا تمثل فرصة استثنائية فحسب، بل تفرض تحدياً وتهديداً أيضاً للمنطقة. ولذلك تركز الدراسة التي سنعرضها لكم اليوم على دراسة جيل الألفية من الشباب العربي المسلم. وعندما نتحدث عن التركيز على جيل الألفية، أي أن الدراسة استهدفت الأشخاص الذين ولدوا بعد ثمانينيات القرن الماضي في عالم اختلف جذرياً عن ذي قبل. وقد كانت هذه الدراسة حول مواقف جيل الشباب المسلم من الدين وأيضاً علمائه في العالم العربي مشروعاً شغل تفكير مؤسسة طابة، ثم نفذته بالمشاركة مع مؤسسة زغبي للخدمات البحثية، فأجريت مقابلات وجهاً لوجه لأكثر من 5000 شاب وشابة أعمارهم ما بين 15 و34 في 8 بلدان عربية هي الأردن، الإمارات، البحرين، السعودية، فلسطين، الكويت، مصر، وأيضاً المغرب. حضورنا الكريم، سلطت السنتان الماضيتان الضوء على الدين وعلماء الدين والحياة الدينية أكثر من أي وقت مضى في تاريخ هذه المنطقة القريب. وقد صعق الجميع ذلك الظهور وتلك الوحشية لجماعات متطرفة تعمل باسم الدين. ولكن كم من الناس سأل أسئلة هامة في هذا المجال؟ ما رأي الشباب العربي بالدين اليوم؟ إلى من يذهبون حين تكون لديهم أسئلة تتعلق بدينهم وإيمانهم؟ ما مدى أهمية السياسة بالنسبة لدينهم؟ وكيف ينظرون إلى مجتمعاتهم التي يعيشون فيها وإلى هويتهم؟ وأيضاً ما هي آراؤهم تجاه الجماعات المتطرفة التي تعمل باسم الدين؟ هذه الأسئلة وغيرها تجيب عليها هذه الدراسة التي سيعرضها لكم الدكتور جيمس زوغبي، وهو مدير مؤسسة زوغبي للخدمات البحثية المتخصصة بالأبحاث والاتصالات، وهو أيضاً المؤسس والرئيس للمعهد العربي الأمريكي الذي مقره واشنطن، والذي هو بمنزلة ذراع بحوث سياسية وإجرائية للمجتمع الأمريكي العربي. وأيضاً الدكتور جيمس زوغبي هو محاضر وباحث في قضايا العالم العربي، وله حضور إعلامي واسع في الغرب والعالم العربي. فليتفضل دكتور جيمس.
Good evening. I want to begin by thanking the Tabah Foundation for sponsoring this project and for their foresight in understanding the importance of as I put it in an article recently, talking to and not just talking about Arab youth. It is a subject of enormous concern, but I always find it interesting when people talk about something without hard data. So the idea of actually finding out what young people think, what their worldview is, becomes of critical importance, not only, as you mentioned, because of the size of this population, but they are, in fact, the future of the Arab world. And what we find is that they're not an amorphous mass. They're not a mindless or a directionless group of people, but they have a rather coherent worldview. They have an interesting outlook on religion, on their countries and what their countries need. And when you poll, I always describe it as like opening a window and letting voices in. And you hear 5,300 Arab youth talking to you. You get to organize the data and find the coherency in it, and see how men versus women, how rich versus poor, how older the group in their 30s versus the group in their teens, how they think. And it creates a picture. And it's like pixels in a digital photograph. You know, as the digital photograph begins to get clear, as the pixels sharpen, you begin to see a portrait emerge. And that's what polling does for me. It lets voices in and it makes the picture a lot clearer. So let me begin with the 8 countries that we looked at, and the locales that we polled in those. And the first question we asked a number of questions that just sort of give you the lay of the land. The first question was a question we asked, or we've asked it now for 15 years. It was a question about identity. What is your principal source of identity? And let's put the first slide up. And you'll see that that's not the one. You'll see that the principal source of identity is, as we always find it to be, it's either being Arab or my country. Historically, we always find in Egypt that religion is a principal source of identity. And in Bahrain it is as well, but in most of the Arab countries it is not. The principal source of identity is either being Arab or the country you are from. Let me make a point. In Egypt, it's 49% of the population. In Bahrain, it's 42% of the population say religion. Let's go to the next question, which is, how important is it to you that people know you as a Muslim? And here what you find is that it's extremely important in most countries. And I want to just highlight Morocco and Egypt and UAE and Kuwait, which are the highest, because they also happen to be the same countries where there is a kind of a plurality within the population, a pluralistic mix within the population. For example, in a question that there's not a slide of, we said, how many of you have among your friends and acquaintances people who are not of your religion, people of another religion? And the 4 countries that's the case are Morocco, Egypt, UAE, and Kuwait, where the numbers in UAE, 99% of young people say they have a close friend or acquaintance who's not a Muslim, and yet they're the population that has the highest degree of importance of being known to be a Muslim. So that, in fact, being in a society where you know more people who are not Muslim doesn't make you less Muslim. It makes you more want to be known to be Muslim, which I think is important. Let's go to the next, which is a question we actually broke in half. We didn't ask it either or. Is religion about laws and the right and wrong, or is it a private spiritual affair? We asked it in 2 separate questions, but when you stack them up, you find that in every country except Bahrain and Jordan, in the other 6, religion is viewed more as a private spiritual affair than it is simply about laws and the difference between right and wrong. Now, this one is going to be, should the state be involved in religious affairs? And I have a lot to say about this. Only in Egypt and Palestine and Kuwait is there agreement that the state should be involved in every one of those areas, appointment of imams and regulating discourse, ensuring that religious discourse is not used to promote violence or incitement or hatred, and the full authority to do anything related to religion in society. In Bahrain, it's viewed as negatively, the state involvement is viewed negatively in almost every area. And I would say that in Bahrain you have a huge gap between attitudes of Shia and Sunni, with Sunni being more inclined to support the state being involved and the Shia not being inclined that way, making Bahrain the most resistant. But it's also interesting to note that the one area where everyone agrees that the state should be involved is in ensuring that religious discourse is not used to promote violence, incitement, or hatred. And there's another area where there's agreement that's not here, and that is that there should be control over cultural content that violates societal norms, movies, television shows, etc. In other words, there should be censorship of cultural products. Let me just explain the dash with the UAE where it says regulating sermons. And the reason for the dash there is because it was a third, and a third. 1/3 of Emiratis said that the state should be involved, 1/3 said not, and 1/3 had no opinion on that at all. So that we gave it a blank because it was simply an even split across the board. Let's look at the next. It's interesting that what we find here, we ask the question about how easy is it in your society to adhere to Islamic norms and not be tempted by the realities of contemporary life. And the only place where there was an extreme majority that said, I am not tempted, is in Saudi Arabia. But in all of the other societies, there was this tension between contemporary life and religious values, the UAE being the highest. But of course, that's interesting to note because 74% say they feel tension, but it's also the country where there was the highest incident of wanting to be known as a Muslim. So the tension resolves itself in the way that that young people approach this. Let's look at the next, which is, what is for you the most important aspect of Islam? And this is color-coded, so you have to just bear with me as we go through the code. If you look at the yellow, you'll see that the number one reason given almost across the board, you know, it's second in many countries, but it's the top-ranked issue across the board, is living by Islamic ethics. And the number two is paying attention to the political issues facing Muslims today. Very much at the bottom is the pursuit of Islamic knowledge and the importance of a Muslim identity, which I thought was interesting because this issue of identity is going to keep coming up in different ways. Important to be known as a Muslim. It's not my political identity. It's not the reason why I'm a Muslim. The reason I'm a Muslim is because I want to live by Islamic ethics and I want to pay attention to the issues facing Muslims in the world today. So there's a kind of a picture emerging out of this of what Islam means. It doesn't mean politics. It doesn't mean identity. It actually means living by values and ethics and paying attention to the needs of Muslims in other countries around the region. Now, the next two questions have to go together. We'll look at the first one, which is religion, does it need to be reformed? And you'll find that there's largely disagreement that religion needs to be reformed. Only in Morocco, Bahrain, and Palestine is there a sense that there is a need for reform. In most of the other countries, a majority says no, it doesn't need to be reformed. But look at the next one. What needs to be changed is the language used in sermons, the language used by people who give lectures on religion. There are two separate questions on this. And almost across the board, you get a near consensus that says there needs to be a renewal or change in the language used to make it more relevant to the needs of people today. So the religion doesn't need to be reformed, but the language that is used to talk about today's values, today's issues, needs to be made more relevant. And what I think is also important is there a need for more female scholars and preachers who can carry the message of Islam into the public sphere? And again, there's virtual consensus on that in every country that is the case. Let's go to the next slide. Is religion the cause of decline in the world, in the Arab world today? Only among Palestinians is there a sense that that's the case. In every other country, the answer is no. And then if you look at the next one, is religion going to be important in my country's future? Again, a majority say yes. So it doesn't need to be reformed, but it's going to be important in my country's future. Who has the right to interpret religion? Results get confusing, but if you look at the color coding across, you'll see that the Grand Muftis do quite well in most countries, in 4 of the countries, and Muslim academics do also very well, and sheikhs do very well. What is not the case is any devout Muslim who happens to provide advice or interpret, and TV preachers rank lower than one might expect. Now that's on the question of interpreting religion. We'll come back to that in a minute. How do they view Friday sermons? Well, inspiring and uplifting in Egypt and UAE, also to some extent in Kuwait and Jordan, but boring, a tirade, or the government's voice in Morocco, Saudi Arabia, Bahrain, and Palestine, and high numbers in many of the others. And if you pay special attention to Morocco, Saudi Arabia, Bahrain, and Palestine, you'll find that a significant percentage of that is that it's the government's voice, and it's not viewed as simply religion on its own terms. Now, this next question about extremist groups and their representation and their presentation of Islam, how they treat Islam. The light green is the one to pay attention to, a complete perversion of Islam's teachings. But it's worrisome, and I think needs to be attended to, is that the yellow, which says it's not a perversion of at all, and the bright red that says mostly right, but I disagree with some of their words and actions, and the orange color, which is they're mostly wrong, but they raise issues I agree with, which says to me that young people have political concerns. They have concerns about the societies that they're in and the world they're in, and they want religion to speak to those issues. And so they view the actions as wrong, but they're concerned that some of the issues aren't being addressed. But we'll look at the Palestine and Jordanian numbers. Jordanian numbers actually happen to be a lot of Palestinians in Jordan. When you go to the next one, which is the next slide, which is what is the cause, what are the principal causes of extremism and these extremist groups and their presentation of Islam, you see it's repressive government across the board. Repressive and unrepresentative governments are the problem. We've done this poll before. We did it at Serbaniyas when we presented it to foreign ministers in the region. We did it with all population, the entire, adults and younger people, etc. They're not speaking of their own government. They're speaking of it in a general case. So, for example, 69% of the people in the Emirates, this is not Emiratis, this is Arabs in the Emirates, are saying that it's repressive government. But in another poll that we did at Serbaniyas, we found that 90+% of Emiratis are satisfied with their government and think their government is doing well by them, and they're very confident in their future. They're actually speaking about the cause of extremism in other places. And so they see repressive government, but among Palestinians, it's foreign occupation is the #1 cause. And so that accounts for the intensity of the feeling on the Palestinians. And the 21% of Jordanians who say foreign occupation are the Palestinians in Jordan who say the same thing. What's interesting is that it's not seeking adventure. They don't think that. But they're also impressed to some degree with the conviction of their truth. That to some degree, young people are impressed with people who have strong feelings and adhere to them. These are just some of the basic top-line ideas. I commend to you the whole report, which gives you more detailed accounting of some of the numbers. And I await the discussion that we're about to have. Thank you very much.